and welcome to Adventures with Scars. I'm your host, Lauren Huffmaster. Adventures with Scars is a discussion on the invisible side effects of cancer, those emotional side effects that really define the experience of cancer. Last season, I presented my philosophy on the aspects of the cancer experience that are difficult to put into words. I defined what was invisible and presented a timeline of how we heal from the trauma of cancer. In our second season, I'm talking with other patients, survivors, and co-survivors. These discussions with survivors will help us better understand the experience. Also, we want to know whether or not this idea of invisible side effects of cancer are real. So today I'm going to talk with Christina McAmis. She's been living with metastatic breast cancer for nearly 9 years. She has so much wisdom to offer, and her story is going to be inspiring to many. So thank you so much, Christina, for being here.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
So can we start off just hearing some of your cancer story, your journey?
Oh man, how do you summarize 9 years in 30 seconds? I think that originally, I guess I'll just start kind of at the beginning. I had just had my daughter. She was 11 months old when I was diagnosed. So it was interesting. I was a single mom of my twins originally, and then my daughter, I met my husband and we decided to have a baby before I went to law school. So I took a year off to have her, and I got accepted to an ABA accredited law school, which I never thought I would. I was engaged. I had a new baby. Like, finally, everything in my life was like lining up, and I felt like everything was going in the right direction. And I started law school at McGeorge School of Law, and I was just over the moon with life. I was so excited to be there and to have my daughter and everything to be looking up. And right before midterms of my first year of law school, I went in to have what we thought was a lymph node double checked, because I had been having symptoms of engorgement and mastitis, and I had fought mastitis through like my nursing journey with my daughter, who had been tongue-tied at birth. So like nursing was always a struggle. And so there I was the day before I went in. I can like so remember it, because the townhouse that we were living in, the townhouse next to us, burnt to the ground the day before. And so I was staying at a friend's house with my, 11-month-old. My twins were at grandma's house. My husband was still staying in the house with the animals. So we were all just disjointed, and I had class that night. And I did not sleep well. And I was like, it's an early morning appointment. It was an hour drive from where I was staying. It was like, maybe I shouldn't. And I was like, no, I need to put myself first. I need to check my health. We're going to go in. We're going to take care of this. So I drug my baby with me all the way to the breast specialist. And she said, oh, this lymph node hasn't gone down and you're still having some symptoms. I think that we should just go ahead and biopsy this little half of a grain of rice that we were feeling. And had been ultrasounded, I think it was 3 months prior. And that was when it was, it was a lymph node that was just inflamed from nursing and whatnot. And since I had started school, my nursing schedule was off anyways. So like engorgement and the mastitis, that's all something that would normally happen during that time. So my antenna was not up at all. I went to that appointment. I was exhausted. I dropped my baby off with grandma to be able to go to law school that night. I was sitting in torts class and got a phone call at like 5:50 from my breast specialist. And so like I tried to get my bag and get out of the classroom to be able to like answer the phone and not interrupt lecture. And I missed her, but she had left a voicemail that said to call her in the morning. And I think I knew then that things were not going to be perfect, but I didn't know what was about to happen. And then the next morning I was driving when she returned my call, and she told me that, they had found cancer cells in my biopsy, and that I needed to come back in for some additional biopsies and ultrasounds. But she said, you're young, the mass isn't big. This isn't something that should be overly scary right now. I mean, cancer, that word is always really scary, but we've got this kind of thing. And I went home and just collapsed on my husband and cried. My grandmother had passed from breast cancer when she was 57. My other grandmother had had breast cancer twice, but lived to be like 95, and that wasn't what killed her. So I had this kind of fear of having breast cancer. I was very aware of breast cancer. I knew that it existed. And I was always, that's why I had a breast specialist, even though, I hadn't been diagnosed with anything, and I was not anywhere near 40. I was 32 at the time. And so I went back in. I had additional biopsies. I had skin punches, and then I had ultrasounds of my axillary area. And when they did the ultrasounds of the axillary area, they called in the radiologist. And I knew that was a bad sign. And the radiologist said, well, some of your lymph nodes look a little funny. We just want a biopsy to be sure that we know what we're dealing with. And they biopsied like 6 lymph nodes, and all 6 of them came back cancerous. And so then it went from, oh, okay, it's like, a lumpectomy or radiation, or to, okay, well, now we're going to contact the oncologist. So now it's not just the breast team, now it's oncology as well. And the oncologist called and said, you are young, it is early. We don't think that this is going to be something really life-threatening. It's just, you're going to have to probably have maybe some chemotherapy, and then you'll be able to go on with life. But we should do a PET scan just to be sure that everything is what we think it is. So I had the PET scan done, and I got a call from my oncologist. He said it's not what we wanted, that I had what appeared to be a metastasis in my breastbone above my heart. And he at that point said that he was going to treat it as though it was stage 4, but that we could try to biopsy that area and make sure that it was cancer, because maybe there was some trauma, maybe, maybe, but he said, let's get the port placed. And so I went in to have my port placed, and they were supposed to biopsy the bone at that time. And the radiologist came in, who was going to do the biopsy, and said, look, this is directly above your heart. If I punch in and it is cancer, like we think it is, it's going to go through. And then you're going to have an emergency, because I will have punctured your heart. Like, this is not worth the risk. We know what this is. Stop pretending that we don't. And just because I was really holding out hope that was just, oh, I was a gymnast, I must have run into the vault one too many times, but no. So that was really when it sunk in, and I had my port placed that morning, and I was sitting in class that evening. And then I had the conversation with my oncologist and my breast specialist and my friends and my family. And I tried to keep my mom out of it a little bit, because she had been literally holding her mom when she passed from breast cancer. And I knew how traumatic this had to be for her already. But I was making the decision, like, I had 3 years of law school left. I had, at that time, a 13-month-old daughter, and the boys would have been 6-year-old twin boys. And I had promised them, when I was a single mom, we were living in this little tiny And it was such a blessing. It was such a blessing because the people who rented it to me could have rented it to anyone, and they chose to rent it to me and put it at a price point that I could afford, right? But it was a mobile home on acreage, and the boys' bedroom was literally the laundry room that was like built attached to this mobile home. And we were sitting in their bedroom, and their Nana at the time had this PT Cruiser with fiery flames that went down one side. And they're like, Mom, why don't we have a car like Nana? And I explained, like, you know, we're struggling. But I was going to school and I was going to make it better. It was going to get better when I went through law school. It was going to get better. I was going to graduate and we could focus on doing some of the things that we want to do instead of just the things that we had to do. And all of that just came washing back over me about this discussion of, do I quit school and just spend that time with my family, which was overarchingly the suggestion, right? That you're going to heal better if you're not stressed and the rigors of school and all of that. And just to spend that last time that you have with your family, and to not, they thought that I was not understanding my diagnosis or not accepting my diagnosis when I said I was going to stay in school. But it all came back to that promise that I made to the twins that things were going to get better. And I needed them to believe that they were going to. And I needed them to believe that I was going to live, because I needed to believe that I was going to live. And I said, if the last thing I do is walk across that stage, then I'm going to consider it time well spent, because I can't show them that when things get hard, you just quit. So I finished law school. I ended up that year being the top of my class. And then I did an externship with the prestigious Judge Connie Callahan, Consuelo Callahan of the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, which was an absolutely amazing experience. And I walked across the stage for my graduation with my twins next to me and my daughter in my arms as we crossed the stage. So it was just this really amazing moment. But during that year, that first year of law school, I underwent chemotherapy, 12 rounds of Taxotere, Herceptin, Perjeta, and Arimidex to strengthen my bones. I am HER2 and HER2 positive and ER and PR positive, like all of it, just very positive, which is good because there's more treatment options, but also very inflammatory. So when I first started chemotherapy, I was allergic. We thought it was to the Taxotere. So we did all of the corticosteroids and all of the Benadryl and all of the IV medications to keep it so that I could breathe while having treatment. So that was really fun and exciting. But I did my 12 rounds of Taxotere. The tamoxifen that I was on as a hormone blocking agent created mango-sized tumors on both of my ovaries that year, right before finals. So I got to go see another oncologist, an OB-onc, because they thought that it was metastasis, possibly from my breast cancer, which would have meant that my first line of treatment wasn't working. So I had a complete hysterectomy. They took my cervix, my ovaries, my uterus, and even my my appendix, just in case. So just completely, they gutted me. And because of my ER/PR status, I could not take any of the hot flash inhibitors or any of the hormone treatment that someone at 33 at that time, who just had a complete hysterectomy, would normally be on to help temper the changes that are happening. So I went from being pregnant to nursing to no hormones at all in the span of 2 years. And then I sat my first year of law school finals 9 days after my complete hysterectomy. And then 4 weeks after my complete hysterectomy, well, I guess it was right about the time of my hysterectomy was like my first PET scan after my Taxotere. And I remember laying with my husband, sorry, rewind a few more weeks. I was laying with my husband in bed, and we were feeling, and like I didn't have a mass anymore. It just disappeared. And it was crazy. And we were really hopeful that maybe that meant that things were going well and all that. And then I had the ovarian tumors, and it was like, no, things are not going well. It just has spread and moved. But when I got the biopsies back from my ovarian tumors, they were negative. So that was like the first really, really, really good news, is that this was just a side effect of the tamoxifen. If that could be said to be good news, right? But it was good news. The side effects of the tamoxifen, and it wasn't cancer spreading. So then I got my PET scan results, and man, I don't know if you've talked about PET scans, but when you are so anxious to know whether or not you're living or you're dying, and they they draw your blood, they put the tracer in your blood, and then they re-inject your blood in. No, I'm sorry, that's the MUGA scan. For the PET scan, they make you fast, and then they inject glucose with the tracer attached to the glucose. And then they put you in a dark room where you have to be quiet and not read anything and not listen to anything and not move around, so that glucose can be absorbed. And the idea is that the cancer will absorb the glucose faster because they're more quickly metabolizing cells. So you're laying in that room for a good 30-45 minutes with no external stimulation, and all you have is your thoughts. And then you're in a tube for another 45 minutes, and all you have are your thoughts. And I think PET scans are definitely torture, especially in early days, but even now they are something I don't look forward to, for sure. Anyways, I got my PET scan results on February 22nd of 2015, my first results. And I remember very, 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 very well what day that was, because it was my twin's birthday. And they came back, and my oncologist called me and says, Christina, I cannot believe this. I haven't ever seen this happen before, to this degree, this quickly, but your scan is clean. No evidence of active disease. Now, that's just such a cause for celebration. Whether we can keep here, that's always going to be the goal, because there's no cure. But if we can stay here, that's like best case scenario, is stable for this. And so I celebrated like crazy with my whole family that night. And 4 weeks after my hysterectomy, I had a mastectomy, because they were not going to do a mastectomy because it had already spread, and they said there was no point. But like deep down, I just wanted what had tried to kill me gone. But once the results came back from that first PET scan that showed that I might have a little longer than what they had originally thought, my oncologist agreed that removing a site where cancer could come back, and reducing the risk of that as much as possible made sense. So 4 weeks after my hysterectomy, I had my mastectomy, and 4 weeks after my mastectomy, I got married to my husband. My first year torts professor presided over the ceremony. And that was a crazy whirlwind of a first year of law school and cancer. We switched from being Taxotere, Herceptin, and Perjeta and Zometa to Taxotere Herceptin and Perjeta as like a every 3 week ongoing. And again, it was supposed to be, oh, this will be so much easier because this is just targeted. And we found out I'm allergic to both Herceptin and Perjeta. So I still have to go through all of the corticosteroids and all of the Benadryl, Pepcid, like all of it. And I normally have chemo on Friday, and until Monday morning is the first time I eat, typically after chemotherapy, and I can start drinking things kind of Sunday afternoon. So my husband still literally like will help me get to the bathroom post chemo, or carry me up the stairs in our house. So that happens every 3 weeks, and it has been happening every 3 weeks for almost 9 years now, with the exceptions of 2 times, which were both during COVID, when the oncologist told me that it was more dangerous to come in and get treatment than skipping treatment for a couple of rounds. So that was terrifying in a totally different way. But so I was triple positive, stage 4 de novo, meaning like at the very first diagnosis of cancer, it was stage 4. And here I am 9 years later. I have had treatments every 3 weeks that whole time. I am still incredibly no evidence of active disease, but we've switched from the tamoxifen that gave me the mango size ovarian tumors to Arimidex, which causes joint pain, like some really incredible joint pain, especially in joints that have already had issues. And my right hip I was a gymnast. I was an equestrian vaulter. I was a power tumbler. My right hip is a problem. And I was to the point by the time I was in my second year of law school that I was using a mobility scooter like 80% of the time, and a walker to get around and to and from class. And I was down to 95 pounds because I was taking oral pain medication every 2 hours, and still going to law school. I don't know how I did that. I still don't know how I did that. But after law school, I had an intrathecal pain pump installed in my abdomen that essentially drips morphine into my spinal cord all of the time. So that was another surgery that I went through. And that has made it so that I can walk and that I can get back to doing some of the things I used to do. And I even get to like play with horses and ride on occasions. But
what an incredible story. So many things happening here, and 9 years on the same medication is mind-blowing to me. And just your ability to continue on that med that's going to knock you out for 3 days every week. That's how much resilience you have is incredible.
I don't know, because people say that, right? They say like, I couldn't do that. But I think, Lauren, you know, too, that when the choice is or death is one hell of a motivator. And that I think any woman put in my position in going through the same set of circumstances would do the same thing that I'm doing.
Even so, the resilience that it takes, the amount of strength that it takes to show up and not to get lost in some kind of gloom or depression along the way, that's a significant burden. And even if we would all show up, because it's better than not seeing our children grow up, it's still significant. So I acknowledge you for all of this.
There's definitely been ups and downs for mental health throughout this, and some really interesting low times that I would have thought might not have been there were very apparent.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I have a few questions at the beginning. First of all, I just want to say, when you were diagnosed, there was a literal fire. That's my analogy for when you're being diagnosed, is this running and scattering and all, not knowing really what to do or where to go. And you had a literal fire on your diagnosis day.
Yes.
Wow. Well, the metaphorical fire is enough. So to have both at the same time is just so much. And the other thing I want to talk about is your identity. You literally said you went to, in the morning, you had surgery, in the evening, you were in class. You were living two coinciding identities fiercely, not willing to sacrifice one for the other. It sounds like you had to carry them both fully this entire process.
Yes, I would. And I don't know how I did it, because I had Taxotere, Herceptin, Perjeta, all those pre-meds. I would have chemo in the morning and I would end up in class that night taking notes. And it's crazy because I've had chemotherapy, I've come home, I've taken a nap, and evidently the next day I woke up and I was like to my son Edward, I said, Edward, who cut your hair? And he goes, Mom, you did. And I was like, when? And he's like, yesterday. I'm like, don't let me do that. Like, that's such a bad idea. But to that point of you have amnesia, like for the full, I couldn't tell you what I had a conversation about on the way home. And I literally planned my graduation from the chemo chair. I planned my wedding from the chemo chair. I drafted my trust from the chemo chair. Like, so much of my life has happened from the chemo chair. And I was thinking recently when I was trying to worry about my work-life balance, because it really feels overwhelming right now. And I was trying to figure out why and what. I realized I was traveling for work, 10 weekends a year. And that doesn't seem like a lot because, there's 52 weeks in a year. But then when you add in the 16 to 18 chemotherapies, and you add that together, you realize that I have less than half the weekends that anyone else does. I'm working, as much as possible during the week. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you keep up with things like housework? How do you keep up with things like your kids and going places? And it really does take a lot of your life away from you.
Yeah,
even if you're living it.
definitely so. But you didn't back down. You didn't quit. You continued forward in every way possible, it seems like, while also continuing forward, figuring out you were diagnosed with stage 4 from the beginning. So you had to figure all of this stuff out when it comes to cancer and all your decision making, while also going through law school, which some people can't even handle that alone. Plus with a newborn, I mean, this is this package of life, your life, the life you've chosen packaged together is so full, but yet you do it, and you've not just done it for a short amount of time, you do it for 9 years. I just can't say anything but just how much we want to acknowledge you and the person you are and what you are choosing to be.
Thank you.
You have a choice, right? You had a choice on what you wanted to become.
If I think back to if I would have stayed at home and just hung out with my kids for those 2 years that they told me I had, today I would still be in 1,000 square foot townhouse with 6 people living in it and all the animals, trying to scrape by on public assistance and my disability, which is not very much, because when I got declared disabled was in between school and law school. So like some percent of nothing is still nothing. But that's where my life would be, and it would not have gotten better. My twins' lives would not have gotten better. Things would not have improved. And by graduating law school, and we purchased, not with cash, I have a mortgage. But 2 years ago, we purchased a 2,500 square foot house, and my daughter doesn't have to sleep in the same bedroom with me anymore. My kids go to good schools. I have a car that reliably gets me from point A to point B without like praying to the car gods and rubbing its hood and like loving on the steering wheel before starting it. I literally, with one of my cars during law school, I would pull up car ads while sitting in the front seat and telling it like, hey, you better start. I'm going to replace you. Like, I'm a little crazy that way, but I name my cars and we talk a lot, but things are different now because I chose to have faith in myself, and because I had to show my children that they could have faith in me. And I tell them this still to this day. I say, I am living now, so we're going to worry about living. When that changes, you guys will be some of the first to know. and we will shift our focus. But right now it's about living. So we're not going, it's exactly what you said in season 1 about having the irrational optimism. Like we're focusing on dreaming, we're focusing on planning, we're focusing on not pretending this doesn't exist, because there is no way that you can pretend this doesn't exist while going through chemotherapy every 3 weeks. But the what if I live long enough to see my grandchildren? What if I just live long enough to see my kids graduate? I saw them, my twins have graduated high school. So that was a huge milestone. They have their driver's license. I was crying in the DMV and they were looking at me. I was like, I never thought I would see the, and then they were crying too, and everyone was looking at us, but that's okay. Like I explained, and then everyone was clapping. It was so cool. But yeah, what if
it can be, right? Not what if something bad comes, but what if it can be? And I love this. And the other thing I hear is that you value all the little moments too. You value each precious moment. Not that one day my grandkids will do this or that, but like today we've accomplished something here together, and it wasn't easy, but we're here, and that is a treasure. I mean, your kids will treasure it as well, because you value it. And what I really hear out of you is that you knew what you wanted to accomplish. You knew your deepest values. You wanted to show your kids that you could get somewhere different. And that was not shaken even by cancer, even when they doubled the challenge. Law school is a challenge, and we're going to one up you. We're going to double up you. You're going to do it with young children and with cancer. And even in all that, you couldn't be shaken. You're resolute. You're going to continue forward no matter what. And because that is truly what you desired for your life and your family's life. You had that deep value that cancer could not shake.
I think it's important, though, to recognize that when you have that end goal, I didn't wake up every morning and say, I'm going to graduate law school. Like that was too much. It was too overwhelming to even think about. At some days, I could not even think about dinner. Like that was one thing too many to plan for, to think about. And I'm going to get emotional, but I would wake up and I would feel horrible. And I would say, okay, the only thing I need to worry about is getting to the bathroom. And I would go to the bathroom. Say, okay, the next thing I need to worry about is putting some clothes on. And I put clothes on. Okay, now I need to put something in my stomach. Oh, nope, nothing's going in the stomach. Okay, we're just going to get in the car. It wasn't even we're going to get to school. It was we are going to get into the car. Like that was I would cry if I thought about having to get to the school. So just you go to the car and then you would start driving and you'd end up at school. And you'd leave the car and you would end up at your first class. And you would leave that class and you would end up in your next class. But you didn't think about all the 200 things that you had to do that day, because more than one thing was one thing too many. And so it's about knowing where you want to go, but being okay living in, like you said, that fear, that season, that fire, and not getting used to, but embracing the pain in a lot of ways. And you said, I make moments, and I absolutely try to, but there are equally moments still to this day that I have to take for granted because they're not joyous, wonderful. It's just something that has to get done. And it's okay to have those moments too. Both kinds of moments are going to make up your life. You can't always think that everything is going to be that perfect moment. But when you have a good moment, you celebrate it because you know how important those little celebrations are. And you also equally know how important it is to teach your children how to cope and deal with and come out of the moments that are really uncomfortable, and acknowledging the fact that they're really uncomfortable. And that was something that I did with my children. I said, this is a really hard moment for me. If you just give me a few minutes, I'll pull myself together and we'll leave the house. We'll go. And they got to see that. And I see it in my twins, the resilience. I see it in my daughter as well, the resilience of this moment is really, really, really hard. I lost something I really loved or whatever it is, but just give me a minute. I'll get my poop in a group is the phrase that we use in my household. My poop will be in a group and then we can go on to the next moment.
I have a question. You mentioned that your grandmother, both grandmothers, I think, passed away from cancer. And you said you were very aware of cancer, and like very informed, very, very aware of its presence in your family. My question is, did that help you? Did this sort of education, this PSA, public service announcement version of cancer knowledge, did that help you in your diagnosis, or did it help you in your decision making? Did it help you as you began to parent and move forward? Did this sort of educational level knowledge of cancer help you in the experience of it?
I think that is one of the hardest things I still struggle with today in October, right? It's awareness, 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 awareness. I was so aware. I already had a breast specialist at 30 that I had been seeing. I am not BRCA1 or BRCA2, but I was so aware. I was doing self-exams. That's how I found the little tiny bump that ended up being stage 4. I had a mammogram because I was not old enough to get mammograms before my diagnosis, but right after my diagnosis, they wanted a mammogram to see what was going on. And I went in and had the mammogram, and the radiologist called me in and I was like, oh, well, we know. But he goes, honestly, if I did not have your cancer diagnosis sitting in front of me, I would not have called you back in. There's nothing on this mammogram, nothing concerning. So no, the public health narrative and the PSAs that cancer exists did not in any way help me. And because it didn't help me, I get mad, right? I get frustrated. I'm like, why is all this funding going to this when it should be going to cures? It should be going to lengthening and bettering the prognosis of stage 4 women, because that is the only stage of cancer that kills you. But I was recently at the I'll Be Aware Foundation Rose Awards for my breast specialist who is being honored for all of her work. And I sat at a table next to a woman who was absolutely a treasure. And she had stage 3 cancer. It didn't quite go the wrong way for her, but she went in and had it looked at, like she had felt a lump and was just in denial for a while, like a good 6, 7, 8 months, right? And then that PSA message came on and her radio station was doing a big mammogram drive sort of thing. And she went in and got it checked out. So I think that we can change the way that we do it so that we get the impact of motivating those women that need that and still honoring those of us who did nothing wrong. That's the other thing. Like when I say I have stage 4 breast cancer, people ask, oh, were you obese? Did you drink? Did you not nurse your children? Were you on a lot of hormonal, did you eat organic food? Did you live next to telephone? It is amazing what people want to come up with to make it so that they could control it and not get what's happening to us, right? Like it's, what did you do to get this? As though we did something wrong. And I was a gymnast on the junior national team. I was never particularly fluffy. I never smoked. I was not a drinker. I breastfed all of my children. I was not really on any hormonal birth controls. And I grew up pretty on like 5 acres eating vegetables out of the garden. Like there was stress in my life because I was such a high level competitor, but there is nothing like people need to stop with I get what you're doing, because I fully understand not wanting this to happen to you and wanting to try to have some control over it. But realizing that there is no control is part of taking control over it. And the same thing goes like when you're sitting in your diagnosis, realizing that in the beginning, I'm like, oh, I'm cutting out all the sugar, no sugar, I'm going to eat all organic. And then you just realize like, no, I don't have control of this. No matter what I do, I cannot prevent this from happening. I can reduce risks. I can make good choices, healthy choices for longevity, but it's not in my control. And the other thing that you hear, and then I will move on, but the other thing that you hear is, oh, well, it's because you're so determined, or God has plans for you, or, your children need you. You have something to live for, that you have lived so long. And I have known at least 30 other women personally with stage 4 breast cancer through connections over the years that I have lost, that had absolutely everything I have to live for. And it doesn't come down to wanting it bad enough or being tough enough. And we need to stop with the battle because it doesn't help me with my survivor's guilt one bit, and it's not in our control. It's not in our control. It's not, oh, she gave up. I don't know a woman that has passed that has given up. There's no quit in any of us.
Yeah, I think that
especially in the young survivors.
Yeah, of course. I think that for those of us that it's personal, it's relational, that I talk to people every single day who are walking through this, it's obvious to me, it's obvious to us, because this is not this high level education, like facade that's over us, right? That we're just a statistic. And if we had done something differently, then life could have been better. But this is relational. I'm like you, I know people who are runners, who are, vegan. I know people from every spectrum who got the same disease and who have responded on every spectrum, and the end was the same. And I think it's better if we could just start loving the people who are hurting, right? Like supporting each other, and stop with like you said, the control, the idea of control. But of course, this idea of trying to control it is coming out of fear, right?
Right.
We don't want to find ourselves in the same situation. So we're trying to control what we can. But as you said, at the moment, there's nothing we know for sure that can help us control this disease. But yeah, so thank you for answering that question. I want to know, in your life, is there one between fear, isolation, and this idea of a broken identity? Does one of those show up for you, or do all of those show up for you in your experience?
All of them show up and all of them interplay. The fear is palpable some days. And up until, I would say, I started working with an equine. It sounds almost make-believe. It's like all my little girl fantasies in one, but I do equine assisted therapy, and having that has made a world of difference in my mental health. But up until finding that and starting with that, I literally could not close my eyes and meditate, or I couldn't close my eyes even at night to go to sleep without crying for like 7.5 years.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's going to sound callous, but I think this is what people are thinking. Why? You've had 9 years of no evidence of disease. What are you still afraid of? And I think I know your heart, but I think this is what people are going to think when they hear you say that. What are you feeling, and what is causing this?
So I don't get to leave cancer alone. I still take medication every day that I can't afford not to take, that gives me pain, that makes me nauseous, that makes me tired. Every 3 weeks, I'm there for chemotherapy to try to keep this from going out of control again to keep stable. I am not cured. It is not gone. It is just, if I had to, the analogy I used with my twins was that when I had the tumor, we fought a battle, right? And we won the battle because the tumor is broken, it's gone. But there are still enemy soldiers in the forest of my body. And so we do chemotherapy every 3 weeks to kind of go through and try to wipe out those rogue soldiers before they can build a rebel base. Sorry, I'm a nerd. Before they can build a rebel base or the Death Star somewhere else in my body. And so, yeah, 9 years, no evidence of active disease. It's nothing short of a miracle, but at the same time, I'm one PET scan away from being right back in the fire. And I know what that fire is like. And the women who have gotten, I had a friend who was no evidence of active disease for 6 years. And one PET scan later, 2 months after that, she was gone. So it's not, when I'm in my irrational optimism, it's if. When I'm in my realism, it's when. And 9 years has been a really good run. How much longer can I really expect? And nobody knows. My understanding through my oncologist is that in all of the West Coast, I am the longest stage 4 cancer patient on this particular treatment without progression. And that's really cool that it's me, but so not cool. We just don't know. And we don't know, is it safe to stop treatment? I don't know, but I still have a 9-year-old daughter. And if I stop treatment now and it comes back, I will never forgive myself.
Yeah, and your daughter, she's like my children. You're never gonna have a memory that's not impacted by cancer, but she also is never gonna have a memory where she doesn't see you living this full life and you've made a way for her and for your family despite it. And so just
The biggest
how
thing
that's going to settle in her life and her heart, just this, no matter what challenge emerges, I can emerge too, just teaching your children by example, by your exhaustion and your work and all of this to move forward no matter what challenges come. That's going to be so significant in the next generation.
I hope so. I feel like it is. The twins knew me before cancer and they have memories of me before cancer. Maddie won't, but she will have memories of me, which in the beginning she wouldn't have. And so that's good, right? But if you drop me back into that fear place, that's the fear.
Definitely. So I wanted to ask you, and I ask everyone this, do you think there's a gift in cancer, in this cancer experience? Is there something you experienced here that's beautiful that you probably wouldn't have experienced in life without the cancer?
There's gifts. I wouldn't say there's gifts worth the price. There's gifts. Just the realization of how fast life can change and, live like you're dying. It's a thing for sure. Also, though, I think it's in the small moments for me where when my community, like even the local checkers at my grocery store were like, Christina, I will bring you groceries after work. You just call me. And that coming together of community, that I think, and faith being restored in humanity in that sense. I do think that I am 9 years out, and very much like when you have a baby, right? Everyone comes and wants to help and give you meals and take care of your baby so you can rest and all of that in the beginning. And it dissipates by the time baby is 6 months old, which is really when you're so tired and you're so exhausted and you need the help. I've been doing this for so long now, and the people who love me the most don't want to see me as sick still, don't want to see me as disabled, don't want to see me as someone who could be dying. And so you talk about isolation, and it's almost like there's this whole new phase of isolation, because I don't want to continually tell my children that they should be scared. And I don't want to continually tell my husband I'm scared. And I don't want to continually tell my mom how hard this is. And that is where the horse therapy comes in, because I get to go tell the big old horse how scary and hard this is. And they're huge. And 10 minutes later, they will be eating grass. And all will be right in their world, but it's not because they don't care. When you tell a horse how scared you are, they feel, horses really do feel that energy coming off of you, and they respond to it in a very empathetic way, which is very cathartic. It's very reassuring, but it's someone I can talk to that isn't also going through this with me. And I don't have to feel guilty telling them how hard this is. But then I gather up all my poop and I put it in a group, and I show up back at the office on Monday, and I show up to my children's recitals, and I show up. And I think cancer has taught me how to put my poop in a group and not to be scared of the dark. Well, to be scared of the dark, but to embrace the fear of the dark. There it is, to experience the fear of the dark.
Well, I just want to thank you for showing up for us today. Your story, I know, will inspire so many, because like you said, especially those of us who've been going through this for so long, we can't keep having the same conversations with the people at our side, because we don't want to scare them. We don't want to sort of, even sometimes I feel like it might be guilting them into, like, be with me, stop doing that. Like, you should be valuing this moment, right? And you don't want to do that to others, but to listen to people who are in the same place as you, young moms living with cancer for so much of our lives. It's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to hear your story. So thank you for showing up for us today.
I really appreciate you having me. I know, like, the gifts of cancer is supposed to be ending on a higher note, but I am so thankful for the years that I have gotten, and I choose to be irrationally optimistic when people aren't asking me about my fear. And it's working. It's working. I get through every day, and I have these amazing moments with other people and my children and my family. And I think it's a good thing.
Well, thank you for sharing your heart. And if the gifts of cancer, it makes you think of hard things, that's fine too. We want to hear your true heart. But I also love that you say this irrational optimism works. It's a tool you can turn to that works for you, and it gets you through the day. And I think that is something we can all take away, that there are tools that take us forward. And sometimes it's just literally a choice we make in our mind, and that is all we need.
And it's okay to make that choice. I think in the beginning, it's like, am I crazy am I in denial? But your journey isn't going to change by being irrationally optimistic. I am not going to die sooner, but I'm going to live better while I'm here. And anything that gives quality of life is an absolute necessity.
I love it. I think we should definitely close on that. So thank you so much for listening to Adventures with Scars. If you, like Christina and myself, are impacted by cancer and you need more tools like this to help you get through the day, please check out adventurefound.org, where Adventure Therapy Foundation supports families impacted by cancer. And we're doing everything we can to help parents and help educate us around how to live well, emotionally healthy, well through cancer. So thank you for listening, and tune in next time to hear more wonderful stories.